Welcome back to the I and Kind podcast. I'm your host, Ethan, and alongside me is my co-host, Everett. What's up, dude?
Nothing much. How about you?
I am doing all right. I actually went looking for rattlesnakes this morning and didn't find anything.
Interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting, and it has everything to do with today's podcast, absolutely.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Stand for Kind. Take a stand against bullying in your school and help spread kindness and positivity by visiting www.standforkind.com.
Opening July 23rd in theaters across the United States is the film Joe Bell. Based on a true story, the movie follows Joe Bell, played by Mark Wahlberg, who embarks on a redemptive walk across the United States to fight against bullying after his son Jadin, played by Reid Miller, was bullied in high school for being gay. We had the incredible opportunity to watch a screener of the film in preparation to talk to our guest today. Without giving anything away, Everett, what are your reactions to the film?
I really like the film. So not only is this like a film where there's just one large theme to it, there's also many mini themes that go along to that bigger theme, and everybody can relate to some aspect of this movie.
Yeah.
Each character goes through a lot of different developments and has a lot of different things that face them, and each character has like a separate part that they play throughout this whole family. And I really enjoyed knowing that me as a viewer, like I felt as a viewer, I was connected to the characters that were in there because I've experienced some of the stuff that they've experienced, like a lot of the bullying.
You know, I can't say it enough. I feel so lucky to have not been bullied very much in my life. And so, unfortunately, and fortunately, I can't really relate to a lot of the more depressing things in the movie. But what it does for me is it makes me empathize for those who do struggle with stuff like this. And so to see it in action just reminds me even more just to stand up against this kind of stuff. And that's why I really like the movie. I feel like there should be, and I think the bullies and the interaction between the bully and Reid were good, but I want to see a movie that has more passive-aggressive like bullies, because I feel like that's a lot more common than crazy physical bullies that get up in your face all the time like they do in movies.
Yeah, today's form of bullying is actually, as we all kind of know it, through a screen, and we see a lot more of word hurt rather than physical hurt, but that doesn't say that it doesn't exist. It still does.
But people almost have mastered making it super subtle, so that even though the person that's getting bullied is almost questioning if they're just kidding or not, or if they're actually trying to hurt you. And so sometimes someone gets offended and they didn't even mean to get offended. And sometimes when someone's trying to bully you, sometimes they could be so subtle about it, it can actually specifically hurt you, but other people will not notice. And that's one of the toughest forms of bullying that I want to see in action on some sort of film, because I haven't seen it yet. But then again, I don't watch movies, so.
Yeah, and there's both kinds of bullying in this movie.
True.
Joining us today as our guest is the incredibly talented star of Joe Bell. He plays Jadin Bell in the film. Please welcome Reid Miller. How you doing, Reid?
What's going on?
Tell us a little bit
It's going good.
Tell us a little bit about yourself before we start asking you questions.
Man. Where do I start? Well,
name,
Reid.
age, address.
Yeah, name, age,
just kidding.
address.
Phone number.
PO box.
Please send me gifts. No, my name is Reid Miller. I'm 21. I'm told that I look like I'm 8 years old, but I guess it depends on who you ask. Yeah.
I'm 16.
Yeah, you feel that?
I get
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, so you feel that.
Oh, yeah.
I've been an actor and a filmmaker for about 8 years, almost 9 years now. And yeah, I'm also, I guess, a little side note, I'm also a martial artist. I like martial arts. I like stunts, and I'm a big action movie fanatic.
Really?
And
so,
yeah.
What sort of martial arts do you practice?
I've studied a few different styles over like the course of my life. I started with Taekwondo. I wasn't super into it. And I shifted from that to Shaolin Kung Fu, which I really enjoyed. And then after that, I did Shodan Judo Karate, which I'm a black belt in. And then I started doing like Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, like a bunch of different styles. And I also like grew up wrestling because my dad was a wrestler as well.
That
So I don't know. I've always had a weird fascination and connection with fighting and with martial arts and
that is
all that.
incredible. I am not much of a sparrer, but I do. I am a martial artist myself as well. In fact, I've done it since I was, I think, yeah, 7. And I pursued
Okay.
it for a while, and I have a few world titles.
Oh, that's great.
By if you're into stunts, just by chance, have you seen the thing that kind of blew up on YouTube, the Ninja Kids parody, few years back?
The Ninja
It was
Kids
like it was,
parody.
there were just like these kids who were playing these Power Rangers on YouTube. It blew up, like 4 years ago.
I feel like I don't think I ever watched it, but I've definitely heard of it, and I've heard people talk about it like a few years ago, but I don't think I ever actually watched it. I watched more like Raka Raka videos and Corridor Crew and
It's definitely
um
stuff for like,
yeah,
of course, it's not stuff for your age range, but it does
right.
involve those stunts, within filmmaking, and that's I was the Green Ranger, so
Oh, that's cool, man.
I thought it was really a pleasure, and I think that's amazing to know that you also study martial arts. I do specifically Taekwondo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed doing Taekwondo when I did, but I think I was so young that I I was just drawn more towards artistic and spiritual styles,
Hmm.
which is why I was really drawn to like kung fu and like Shaolin kung fu and things like that.
Nice.
Just because I don't know, I always found it super fascinating. But I have respect for all forms of
Yeah.
martial arts. I think
I
they're all incredible in their own way.
I don't know why I find what I find fascinating like fascinating. I don't know why, honestly.
Oh, I don't either. I just do. It's just like, well, I
Exactly.
guess I like it. I don't know why.
So, what did you do to prepare for a role like this?
I mean, you know, having had a few years of experience acting under my belt, anyway, but it was one of those things where you think you know how it's going to go, and then you go into it, and it's completely different. Because growing up, I did a lot of comedy. I did a lot of, I mean, I did my fair share of drama, and I'd always wanted to do drama. That was sort of the goal. I would always tell my agent and manager, I'm like, I want to do serious, dramatic things, which is hilarious because now I'm kind of wanting. I see the pleasure of doing both. But at the time, I was pretty one sided, one track mind to do one specific type of thing. Um, but I ended up doing a lot of comedy. I starred on a show for 3 seasons called Play by Play that's on Roku, that has done really well, that people really really enjoy. It's a '90s coming of age, not sitcom, but it's like a coming of age rom com. It's like just about this kid who's trying to be a football player, but he's too small, and he's trying to get the girl who's on the soccer team, but she's dating a bigger guy, and it's one of those, but it's really sweet and has a lot of heart. But going from something like that to Joe Bell was very, very, um, I wouldn't say difficult, but it was just a very different process. Um, Going into that, it was like not only are you dealing with this extremely sensitive and extremely serious and heavy subject matter and material, but you're dealing with a true story, and you're not playing a character. You're playing a person who lived and breathed, who has a family and people who cared about him. So that changed everything from the get go about how I approached it, about how I prepared for it. And I mean, honestly, I would say how I prepared for it was just research, research, research. Talking to his family, talking to his mom, talking to his brothers, talking to people who knew him, seeing some home videos of him. I listened to the songs that he listened to. I wore the clothes that he wore. I mean, it was just as much research as humanly possible. Um, but something that I also had to remember was Jadin's struggle was pretty internal, because he was always very open and unapologetically truthful to who he was. He never hid it. So for me, I had to take what everyone said about him in stride, because a lot of people thought he was okay when really he just kept a lot of it internal. So it was also finding that truth within myself of, well, what do I keep internal, and how can I use that into playing Jadin to the best of my ability. So I feel like it was just a lot of research, and also just finding my own struggles and kind of dealing with my own struggles throughout the filming process that allowed me to, I think, portray him as accurately as possible. And try, I think there was a really beautiful painting to paint there emotionally, and I hope that I hope I was able to do that.
Yeah, you talk about like bottling emotions up, and I feel like we all kind of do
Mm-hmm.
that. We kind of bottle up because we don't want to seem weak. We don't share our own
Mm-hmm.
emotions with other people because we don't want to see like that weak person. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, have you ever like experienced like that? How Jadin felt in your life?
Oh, of course. I mean, I growing up, I was always considered the weird kid because I grew up in Texas. I grew up in Texas, and I was very artistic, but I had no clue that I wanted to be a filmmaker. So for me, I was always that kid that no one quite understood. So I dealt with a lot of bullying. And to kind of touch base on something that you guys were talking about a few minutes ago about, more subtle bullying, right? Like passive aggressiveness. It's really funny because I've seen both, but I predominantly faced the more in your face kind. And I think it also depends on where you are and the culture of where you are, because I feel like every city and every state sort of has their own, like LA is very, you know, art centric, you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
someone like me would really fit in there, as opposed to smaller places in Texas that don't understand the film industry. um so growing up there, it was like I did experience a lot of that in your face bullying of people. You're artistic, well, they assume you're one way or the other, and then you get bullied because of that. And so for me, I it's really funny because I bottled certain emotions up, but I was the kid who would get kicked out of school because I kept trying to pick fights, because I was trying to prove how strong I was,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to doing the smart thing, which is not giving them any attention. Um, so as I got older and I started, when I came out to LA, I even encountered some of that, because this is a very intense industry and it's a very competitive industry. So I faced a lot more of the subtle, um, passive aggression side of bullying when I came out here, and not as much anymore, but when I was younger. And that's when I started to really bottle everything up. And so having that, knowing what that's like to a degree, I of course can never understand what he really experienced, but having my own experiences with feeling like you can't say anything, or feeling like you shouldn't say anything, or that you're in the wrong and you're being bullied because you did something wrong. I think I was able to understand that side of him, at least to the best of my ability, because I have had that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of experience leads to a lot of being able to understand and a lot of empathy and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
what scene was the most difficult to film and why?
There's a scene in the film that I can't talk about, but I think you've seen the film. I think you'll know what I'm referring to. It's
Mm-hmm.
near the end of the movie. But there's a scene where, to not spoil anything, Jadin is reaching out to people for help, and no one's quite reciprocating that, and no one is quite giving him the help that he needs in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was probably the most difficult scene to film, because you know at the time of filming that, I was kind of emotionally feeling like I was at the end of my rope, if I'm being completely transparent. Like, I really was having a very hard time in my life. And so when the day came to shoot that scene, it's really funny. We did a bunch of takes, and myself and the director both knew that I wasn't going all the way. And I think it was because I didn't want to be that vulnerable. I didn't want to go to that place and just show all of these random people that I've never met before something that I'm dealing with. But finally, we had done a few takes, and I realized, I'm like, the whole point of doing this role is to honor Jadin's legacy. And if I'm going to do that, I have to be able to put myself out there and put that on the line and show people how seriously that I take it, and go all the way if I'm going to honor him. Um, and so finally we did it, and I was able to go there, and I was able to let my walls down and show this side of myself that I had never shown anyone before. And I would say that was definitely the hardest scene to film, just because is very scary, very scary scene, and just a very heavy scene and a very important scene in the movie. It's one of the most pivotal. So I'm very, very, very happy with how it turned out. But it was definitely a journey. It was definitely a struggle to film that one.
Thank you so much for telling us that. I am fascinated, and I think I admire you for that as well. I've never really been one to be able to cry on command, um, but it's hard being asked to just show a side of you that you almost never let anyone see, and it's being
Mhm.
put on a camera, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so I admire you for that.
Oh, thank you.
So you
Appreciate
talked
that.
you talked about how like that was kind of like a dark place. You didn't want to show all these different random people, a place that you were at in your life. And
Hmm. Hmm.
I just like how that's like, we mentioned something about like the comfort zone in a lot of our
Hmm.
episodes, and
Hmm.
doing work inside your comfort zone is probably like the least healthy place you could be. You grow a lot more out of your comfort zone. So how could you
Yep.
speak to you grow outside of your comfort zone, and how has this film helped you grow outside your comfort zone?
I mean, that's a really good way to put it. I mean, if you stay within your comfort zone, how are you going to grow? I mean, you're just going to stay in one area for the rest of your life, which is being comfortable, which some people like. But I think if you ever want to grow as a person and like keep moving forward and growing emotionally, you have to step out of your comfort zone. And I've been doing that a lot lately. And I think Joe Bell was sort of the first big step out of my comfort zone, because again, it was being able to be vulnerable in front of people that I don't know. Like, it's one thing to be vulnerable with your friends. It's one thing to be vulnerable, maybe even with your parents, depending on what your relationship is like. And I'm very close with my family and with my friends, but these were people that, this was my first big, big, big film that I was starring in with a huge actor that I loved. So there was already that pressure of getting it right, and then there was the added pressure of it being a real story. There was the added pressure of the family being involved, and then the added pressure of expected to be, as vulnerable as you can. Um, and that was really out of my comfort zone. But I feel like because I was able to do that and I just sort of took the plunge, I've learned so much about who I am as a person and how I need to grow emotionally. And it's just really helped me figure out who I am and what direction I need to take. And also what roles I need to take, and that I need to just be very careful and always know where that line is, and always remember that there are people who care about me, um, and that there's nothing wrong or weak about being honest and reaching out to people if you need help. I think it's stronger to ask for help than to assume you don't need it, which I think can be dangerously arrogant.
So, how did you deal with bullying in your life?
I mean, for me, it just depends on which part of my life we're referring to. I mean, I think as a kid, I definitely, and I still have this issue sometimes if I'm dealing with someone who's getting a little smart with me. I do tend to jump to the aggressive response. And it was actually funny when we were filming Joe Bell. The first few days of filming, we were filming a lot of the bullying scenes, and there was a lot of improv involved in the whole movie. There was a lot of me and Mark doing what was on the page, but also doing what was in our heart and reading between the lines and just saying what we felt was necessary to say and what they would say, which was wonderful. It was such a creative environment, but and collaborative environment. But I think in the first few days, I was having a hard time portraying the soft side of Jadin, because naturally for me, I jump to the aggressive side when I feel threatened. And so, growing up, that was my response. But now when I deal with it, typically I just ignore it, which sounds some people may say that's bad, some people may say this or that, but for me, if you try to face it, like, and when I say ignore it, I don't mean stepping down or letting it happen. I just mean there are some people who, if you give them attention, they'll keep doing it. But I don't want that to sound like I would step down if someone I knew was being bullied. You know what I mean? I think bullies and it's very situational, and depending on the situation is how you should react. Like for me, if someone is giving me a hard time or whatever, I tend to just ignore it and it tends to go away on its own. But there are some people who are in a really bad place in their life or they can't ignore it, or they're dealing with an extreme form of bullying. And I think that needs to be stood up to. I think any form of bullying needs to be stood up to, but I think it needs to be handled in a very sensitive manner. And that's why I'm saying the aggressive side is something I've had to learn to control, because that's not how you need to handle it. But you always have to be able to have the heart and to have the courage to stand up to bullies, and to, more importantly, I think, let the people who are being bullied know that they're not alone, and know that for whatever reason they're being bullied is not an excuse to be bullied, and that they're not alone, and that they have support, and that they have friends, and that it will end, and that they will get through it. And I think that's really, really important. It's just showing empathy and letting everyone know that they're not alone, and that everyone has hard times, but if you stick with it, you will get through it.
Yeah, so you talk about the aggressive side and containing that aggressive side. Going through middle school, where I experienced a lot of my bullying, that was something that I had to learn to do too, is because when I would take somebody's, the hard time that they would give me, my instant reaction was just to give them a hard time back and try to be stronger, or even more like more mean than they are to me. That way I'm the winner, right? But bullying's not like a fight between the two of you. It's just somebody is being more mean to somebody else than they are to you.
It's almost like trying to beat him at a game of who can eat more garbage.
Or who can dish more garbage too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. Who could dish more garbage?
It's like not productive.
So I feel like
no one wins.
Yeah, nobody wins. And definitely with bullying, nobody wins. Like that's our saying here, like our podcast, is that it destroys the life of the bully and the one that is being bullied. So I feel like learning to contain that aggressive side and that first instinct to want to fight back is a lot better. And also to not, take that to the extreme and just let it keep happening to you, because one of the P's of bullying is persistence. So we can't just keep letting it persist and go on. So I feel like that's a great idea and a great point that you brought out. So what did you learn about yourself and about society from starring in this role?
I learned that as a society, we have come very far in terms of tolerance and in terms of being allies to anyone and everyone. But I've also learned that there are still so many people who just simply don't get it, who don't have the empathy, either because they have never experienced that type of bullying, or because they have experienced it and they think dishing it out will make them feel better. I don't know. But it really taught me that, it taught me a few things. It taught me that, yes, we've come a long way, but there is still so much further to go. It taught me that there are a lot of people who, because we have come so far, think it's okay to not keep pushing forward, because it's like, oh, well, we are a lot more tolerant. We have there are laws passed that are aiding the LGBTQ plus community. Like there are groups and people that are standing up with the LGBTQ plus community. That's great, but that's not an excuse to stop or like let the foot off the gas. We have to keep going if we hope to get to a point in our lives where there is, where we get to a point where everyone is included and accepted no matter what. And that's what it really taught me, was that we've won a lot of the battles, but there's still a war to be fought, and there's still people to fight for, and there will always be people to fight for. And a lot of people need to learn empathy, because I was talking about this in another interview. I think one of the most one of the biggest forms of bullying at the moment is online bullying, because everyone's online, and being online gives people that sense of not ambiguity, that sense of I don't know what the word is. It's escaping me, but they can hide behind their screen, and
Invincibility, I
they
think is what
feel
you're looking for. Yeah.
it kind of gives them a sense of invincibility, because if you say something wrong to the wrong person, you might get your teeth knocked out depending on where you are. But and that's not the right response. But I'm saying, because now we have this new medium, people are taking advantage of it, and I hope that this film shows people that we may not experience as much bullying in person. Maybe it's not as aggressive in person, but it's even worse online. Like, if you see what people say to each other just in YouTube comments, it's horrendous. It's horrendous. People have absolutely zero empathy. And a lot of the times when they're called out, they say, "Oh, I'm trolling," or "Oh, I'm joking," or they just can't take a joke. And it's like, you don't understand how effective words can be, and how damaging words can be. Words can almost be more damaging than a punch to the gut. I mean, you can recover physically. Some people can't recover emotionally. And I hope that this movie shows everyone, no matter what side you're on, that we all could use a little more empathy.
I appreciate that. That's something I've been focusing on lately, is to try and be as empathetic as possible in any situation, literally any situation.
So I want to share with us a stanza from a poem that I wrote. It was the second poem that I ever wrote, and it kind of goes along
Okay.
with this whole equality thing that we've been talking about. The title of the poem is the letter P, and I'll just go right into it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm just gonna read the first stanza and then the second stanza. Pain, persistence, people, purpose, potential. People, are we equal? Are we left or right? This team or that team? But here's what I mean. We have lost sight. All these choices, we need to decide which side. We need to zoom in and realize that first, we are human. So going along with the equality that we've talked about and giving everybody a human, like, it doesn't matter like what you've done or any of that. We need to realize that first, everybody's a person. Everybody's emotional first. So reading into those words that you give somebody and seeing them is like just another person, right? Like, no,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's human. So whether you like team A and they like team B, you don't need to contest them and, like we talked about earlier, fight them and see who can throw the most garbage,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
we need to realize that first, we're human. We all have our differences. We all have our different choices. Like, it doesn't matter if you have a different opinion of me. We're all gonna have our own opinion,
Mm-hmm.
and as humans, we are entitled to that own opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I loved hearing that. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, I just hope that I really hope that this movie is able to just get people to understand that, we're all in this together, and, there's no need to pick fights. There's no need to have a problem with every other guy that, you just don't like for one reason. I mean, it's just like, I just hope that people can, I hope this film unites people. I really do.
Yeah, I feel like as a community, the thing that we lack most is our unity. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's another line from another poem that I wrote. But I feel like we
I
definitely
love
need
that.
to come together as one rather than separate us as one. And there's a lot of things out there that are like separating us. Like I mentioned, one, sports. There's politics. There's everything is we're all just like separating ourselves from each other. When really we need to realize that first, we're the human race, right? We don't need to worry
Yeah,
about anything else but the fact that we're human first.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
did you learn anything from watching the progression of Mark Wahlberg's character, it kind of in his redemptive state?
Mm,
Did I ask that
mm.
right? Or do you want me to ask it again?
No, 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 no. Yeah, I think for me, you know, I think it taught me a little bit of empathy, that, you know, there are people who can change, and, just even knowing Joe's story taught me that. And I think, like, actually watching it and, like, hearing about Joe's story and, like, all the people that he affected on his journey taught me, like, there are people in my life or people that I've met who you know, I never thought could change, but I see things like this, and it gives me more empathy. Where if someone like that is to change, we also have to allow them to change, because there are people who've made mistakes that atone for their mistakes and try to change, and a lot of people, again, especially online, just cannot let certain things go. And I think it's kind of hypocritical to for people to be like, well, we have to have empathy for everyone, but we can't allow people to change to give that empathy. So I think that's something I learned is, it's been hypocritical of me in the past to say, well, we all need empathy, but then I can't learn to forgive someone and take and really understand that they've changed. And so I think I learned that just through the process of the movie and watching the film. And so I learned that, and I hope that a lot of people who've been hurt in the past can learn that too, and maybe not even learn, but accept that no matter how bad someone may seem, that they can change if also given the right amount of empathy.
Yeah. So, like I said, going through middle school is where I experienced a lot of that. And so,
Yeah.
being able to like see somebody from now where I'm going into my senior year, and from 7th grade, there's a lot of change that people can experience from point A to point B. And so being able to forgive that person for making you feel the way that they did, or doing something that made you really upset at them, being able to forgive them is like almost taking the first step at it, because it makes you feel better about yourself knowing that, you were able to forgive them, but it also makes them feel better knowing that you were still able to forgive them, because now they can show a different side of them to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like one of the best ways and biggest steps to take in helping someone change is showing them that you can forgive them. I mean, which is also one of the hardest steps to take, I feel like, especially depending on what's been done to you or whatever. I mean, being able to forgive a bully is very hard. But if you can do it, that may help them realize that they need to change.
I really hope a lot of people get to hear this podcast. I think they could learn. I think there's a lot of people that could learn a lot from you. I mean, we've interviewed many people, and many people have great advice. They have great intentions, but I'm seeing a different side to things, and I haven't felt that yet when interviewing someone. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, thank you for having me on. And I also wanted to say, you kind of reminded me of this. There's someone in my life really recently who I just saw, who really opened up a part of my heart that I never thought would open again. And it's allowed me to view things differently, and to start really letting my walls down and forgive certain people.
Yeah.
And more importantly, let go and move on. And I think, again, that's why it's so important to be an example of that. It's just one way one person treats you can change how you treat 100 other people.
Most definitely.
And I feel like I used to be very jaded with people, and I've just been very lucky and blessed to have the people in my life that I do, because they've allowed me to really, let my walls down and let more people in and learn to forgive.
I feel the same way.
So thanks for having me. You guys are great.
Absolutely. I can completely agree and relate to, feeling so blessed to have the people around me that affect me to become the person that I am, so that I can do the same to others. I mean, it's inspirational, and it affects others, and it in a good way, and that's it. It's like breeding good people.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So to you, what is the truth in the line, "I'm not the one who needs therapy, they are"?
My personal favorite line. I remember hearing it in the scene, and I was just like,
I remember
he's
watching
right.
the trailer and hearing it.
He's right.
Yeah. It's a powerful line. It's, I think how do I'm thinking about this very carefully. I think the truth in that line, I think the reason it's a very powerful line is, you know, therapy. I feel like it can be seen as a really positive thing or a really negative thing. So I feel like there's a lot of sides to that line. I feel like it's in the way at least I used it was a very aggressive way. It's like, why do I need therapy when I'm the normal one? They're the people going out of their way to relentlessly torment someone that they don't even know, nor will never take the time to know. So they're the ones who need therapy. Um, and I think that's a very complicated line, and it seems simple, but like as I think about it, it's like, what does it mean? You know what I mean? Like yeah, I know what it means to me, but it means something different to everyone, I think. And I think, for him, it's for Jadin in that moment, he is being unapologetically true to who he is. He's saying, I am who I am, and I'm not afraid of who I am. Therefore, I don't need the therapy. They need the therapy because they're afraid of someone they don't understand. Because they need to learn to be inclusive and to want to learn and get to know the people around them as opposed to just hating what they don't get. And I think that's kind of what that means. At least to me is what that means.
To me, it means I don't think this would have been Jadin's perspective, but my perspective
Mm-hmm.
of that line, which is why I loved it so much, is that usually those that are going out of their way to hurt others usually have something going on deep down that is really
Yeah.
bad and that you need to be
Yeah.
extra empathetic about, even when they
Yeah.
are being ruthless toward you.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like, in a positive way, they need therapy to help them make themselves feel better about themselves so they don't need to bring
Yeah.
other people down. They're, we don't you don't want to be the person that's bullied to the point you need therapy. You want to
Right.
help the people that are bullying so that they don't
Mm-hmm.
bully others to feel like they need therapy and then eventually they are fine. It's almost like a constant cycle.
Right.
It's almost something that gets passed down. Like almost I feel like almost like a bad parent. Not always.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone is
Mm-hmm.
like a bad parent, that can kind of ruin a child and create that child to grow up to be maybe not a not so
Mm-hmm.
good person. And that could be their
Mm-hmm.
dad's fault or their mom's fault. And then so on. It could be their mom's dad's fault. And it just goes on and on and
Mm-hmm.
on. And there's always someone else to blame. And so just trying to make the change so that there's no one else to blame because you are the positive, inflicting,
Mm-hmm.
uh, influencing others to do the same is what is so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, parenting is always gonna be a major, always has major effects on their child and
I
and
was
and and possibly on their child's child,
Yeah, I was just giving an example. Mostly, I mean, I was just
Yeah.
kind of trying to relate it to the bully. The bully that bullied you has probably been bullied by someone else, who was probably bullied by someone
Mm-hmm.
else, and so on. You
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah,
so, as soon as you
absolutely. I mean,
stop the
there's always
cycle,
a
it's
yeah.
it's it actually helps more people than you know. It doesn't just help the person that you know you are saving. It helps so
Right.
many.
Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah, so this line's a big one. So when I watched that first in the trailer, like when my very first impression of it was, um, the first thing that went to my brain was it's not going to stop it. Having the person who is being bullied having therapy, that might help with the emotional side a little bit, but that's not going to stop the bullying, and that's just going to keep damaging
Yeah.
the emotional side, and then it's just going to get fixed, and then yeah. But I feel like they need therapy means they need therapy, like Ethan said, so that they stop bringing people down. So that way it ends the bullying cycle that you guys mentioned, right? So that's what that line really meant to
Yeah.
me, was just it's not going to stop it. It's not the solution. So they need it, not me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are all great um, great perspectives. Absolutely. And I think I love that. That's great. I'm glad that, you know, everyone's sort of able to take their own thing out of it, which I think is important.
Help put therapy out of business.
Help put therapy out of
So that
business
people
by
don't need, because if people don't need it, then they go out of business. That was that was a long shot.
but hey, it's a dream. And
Yeah,
hopefully maybe we'll get to a place where it won't need to be a dream.
that would be a dream.
Yeah.
That would be really nice, though. So, we'd like to thank the amazingly talented Reid Miller for giving us his insight into what it was like playing the role of Jadin Bell in the upcoming movie Joe Bell. The movie opens in theaters nationwide July 23rd. Go watch it. You won't regret it, I promise. You can follow Reid on Instagram at @TheRealReidMiller.
It doesn't matter the race, religion, social standing, or sexual orientation. Bullying destroys lives for both the victim and the bully. Let love and kindness prevail. And if you're having thoughts of suicide, please speak up and ask for help. You are not alone. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255.
It was an amazing show today. Thank you again, Reid Miller. And thanks to my
Yeah, of
co-host,
course.
Everet. And of course, a huge thank you to everyone listening to this episode of the Eye and Kind podcast. And remember, you matter.